Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are putting a very specific record on the turntable, metaphorically speaking.
Metaphorically, yeah.
Right. But we're also putting an entire subculture under the microscope. We are looking at a moment where this hyper-local, frantic, really street-level sound suddenly found itself on the global stage.
It really did.
So we are talking about DJ Rashad's 2013 studio album, Double Cup.
Which is, I mean, it's just a massive record to tackle. And honestly, it's a pretty heavy one to discuss in more ways than one.
It really is. And I want to start with that weight right off the bat. This isn't just a standard, album review where we just talk about beats and bars.
No, not at all.
When Double Cup dropped in October 2013, it was DJ Rashad's first proper studio album. And tragically, because of his passing shortly after, it remains the only full-length album released during his lifetime.
Yeah, that's the crucial context that hangs over every single track we're going to talk about today.
Exactly.
We're looking at a snapshot of an artist who was arguably just hitting his absolute creative peak.
Right. The mission of this deep dive isn't just to mourn what we lost. It's to understand how this specific record managed to do something almost impossible.
Right.
It took the Chicago Footwork sound and it just blew it up globally.
And just so you know where we are pulling all this from, our sources for this deep dive include a lot of the original critical reception from when the album dropped, production notes on how it was actually made, and retrospective analysis of the album's legacy over the last decade.
Right, because the way people view it now is, well, it's very different from back then.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into that. But before we get into the history, I think we need to set the stage for our listeners who, might not be hardcore electronic music heads.
Good idea.
When we say footwork or juke, what are we actually talking about? Because if you've never heard it, describing it as dance music just feels like a massive understatement.
Understatement is putting it mildly. Footwork is intense. It's a genre born in Chicago, specifically for these rapid-fire dance battles. We are talking about music that clocks in at 160 beats per minute, 160 BPM. That's heart attack speed.
It is. It's characterized by these syncopated rhythms, really heavy sub-bass, and repetitive vocal chops that get twisted and turned into percussion. It's athletic music.
Athletic?
Yeah, it's meant to make your feet move faster than your brain can even process.
Okay, so keep that sonic image in your head. Frantic, sweaty, 160 BPM battle music. That's the baseline. But then enter Double Cup.
Right.
This album wasn't just another collection of battle tracks. It was released on Hyperdub.
Right.
Which is this legendary UK label known for much more moody, atmospheric dubstep.
Exactly. And that label choice is the first clue that something different is happening here. This was the exact moment where those local Chicago subgenres, juke and footwork, started shaking hands with the wider, artsier world of electronic music.
So let's unpack the origins of this specific project, because the visuals alone tell a story. If you look at the cover art, which was designed by Rashad's friend Ashes57, what are we actually looking at?
We are looking at a stark, nighttime aerial shot of Chicago. It's beautiful, a little bit lonely, honestly, but it anchors Rashad's identity firmly to his hometown. Even though, as we'll see, the actual recording process took him all over the place, the soul of the record is explicitly Chicago.
Right. But here's where the making of story gets really interesting to me. You see DJ Rashad on the cover, singular. So you naturally assume, okay, this is a solo genius locked in a soundproof booth somewhere for a year.
Oh, absolutely not.
Right. The source material paints a completely different picture. This was not an isolationist project.
Far from it. In fact, you can't really talk about Rashad or Double Cup without talking about the Teklife crew.
Teklife. That's the collective he was part of.
Right. Rashad had this philosophy that was actually pretty unique in such a competitive scene. He believed that collaboration was the main fuel for creativity.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it wasn't about guarding his secrets or hiding his samples. It was about sharing the energy.
I really love that. It pushes back against that whole tortured solo artist myth. And we have some specific details on how that collaboration actually worked for this album. We know from his collaborator, DJ Spinn, that a lot of these tracks weren't just made from scratch in a single day.
No, Spinn noted that many of the tracks were pre-existing ideas. They were these sketches and loops that the crew had been kicking around for like 7 or 8 months.
Wow.
Yeah, they were just continuously reworking them, refining them, polishing them up.
Which implies a level of care and curation that people sometimes don't associate with such a fast-paced, raw genre. They were really crafting this thing.
Precisely. They were treating footwork with the same studio rigor as a pop album or a high-concept electronic record.
And the setting. This is honestly my favorite detail in the research.
Yeah.
They weren't in some multi-million-dollar studio complex in L.A. or London. Where were they recording this masterpiece?
This is the best part. Spinn mentioned his own studio, sure, but a significant portion of Double Cup was actually recorded in San Francisco, specifically in the apartment of their friend Taso's girlfriend.
Just in an apartment.
Yeah.
Hanging out.
Exactly.
That is so relatable. It completely grounds the whole legendary album status in reality. It's just friends in a living room making music.
And we have to mention the atmosphere of those sessions because the sources are quite specific about the vibe in that room.
Yeah.
The recording was done, and I quote, much of the time under the influence of cannabis.
Which brings us directly to the title of the album, Double Cup. And this is where I think the genius of the record really lies. We need to talk about the tension here.
It's the central conflict of the album, really. Double Cup is a direct reference to the method of preparing and consuming lean.
Which is codeine cough syrup mixed with soda, right?
Yes.
And lean is a downer. It slows you down. It's associated with being stuck to the couch, leaning, moving in slow motion.
Exactly. So think about that. You have a genre, footwork, that is entirely defined by a 160 BPM speed, athleticism, and frantic energy.
Yeah.
And you title the album after a substance that makes you feel like you're moving underwater.
It's a total paradox.
It is. And that paradox is the actual sound of the album. Drowned in Sound pointed this out in their original review. They talked about the balance of electronics and drugs. It's this sensation of sprinting while you're falling asleep.
The sprinting while falling asleep.
Yeah, it's a very specific, almost psychedelic headspace.
So let's deconstruct that sound a bit more. If a listener hasn't heard Double Cup and they're expecting just raw, aggressive battle tracks, what are they actually stepping into? Because the sources say it's a massive blend.
It really is a blend. It incorporates juke, obviously, but also pop rap and R&B. Pitchfork had this incredible description that I think just nails it.
What did they say?
They said the album melts the long history of Chicago house into glossy bits of pop rap.
Glossy bits. That implies a shine or a polish that wasn't really there before in the genre?
And they went on to say it combines the athletic feats of juke with the warmth and soul of the city's R&B. That word warmth is key here.
Right.
A lot of early footwork can sound mechanical, cold, almost aggressive. Rashad brought the soul back into the machine.
That R&B influence is huge. It gives it that emotional hook. It's not just about moving your feet anymore. It's about feeling something in your chest.
Absolutely.
And looking at the track list, that collaborative spirit we mentioned earlier is just everywhere. You've got tracks like Feelin', Past That Shit, and She A Go.
And look at the credits on those. Feelin' features Spinn and Taso. Past That Shit features Spinn and Taso. She A Go features Spinn and Taso.
It's a pattern.
Yeah, and you also have appearances by DJ Phil, Addison Groove, Manny, Earl. It's a complete family affair. It's a posse-cut approach to an electronic album.
And this is a crucial distinction. The writing credits tell us something really important about Rashad's role in all this.
They do. Because despite all those features, all the tracks were written by DJ Rashad.
He was the architect.
He was the conductor of this orchestra, bringing all these voices together under his specific vision. He knew exactly how to use his friends' talents to build the sound he wanted.
So we have this incredible collaborative genre-bending album coming out of a smoke-filled apartment in San Francisco. It drops in October 2013. What did the world think?
Generally, they loved it. But it's nuanced, and looking back, it's actually kind of fascinating to see who got it immediately and who really struggled with it.
Okay, let's unpack that reception. Because looking at the numbers, it has a Metacritic score of 79 out of 100. It's generally favorable, but for an album that we now call a classic, 79 seems, I don't know, a little low.
It reflects the confusion of the time. You have to remember, in 2013, this sound was entirely alien to a lot of mainstream critics. Exclaim was completely on board. They called it a contender for the freshest sounding album of the year.
That's high praise.
They noted it carried the trademarks of footwork, but incorporated all these new ideas.
And NME had that great quote. They called it the sound of footwork at its most bonkers. Which honestly sounds like the best compliment you could possibly give this genre.
It really does.
They praise the innovation in a genre that they said reinvents itself almost weekly.
That speed of reinvention is super characteristic of the scene. Mixmag went even further, calling it career-defining. So you have these really high praises from people who are already plugged into the energy.
But then you have the dissenting voices. And this is where it gets really surprising for me, looking back. Fact magazine wasn't fully on board.
No, they weren't. Their critic actually called it regressive.
Regressive. How do you call something that's innovative regressive?
Well, you have to look at it from the perspective of a footwork purist. Rashad had done earlier work that was much harsher, much more abrasive, and underground.
Okay.
Fact argued that by comparing it to his previous work, Double Cup felt genre diluted.
Oh, I see. So because he added the R&B, the glossy pop elements we talked about, they felt he was softening the edges too much.
Exactly. They saw that accessibility, the very thing that eventually allowed it to go global, as a weakness. They thought he was watering down the raw spirit of the genre.
That is fascinating. It's the classic they sold out argument, but framed as genre dilution. And Rolling Stone had a mixed take as well, right?
Yeah, they did. And their critique is really telling about the difficulty of listening to this genre if you aren't used to it. They found it thrilling in 5-minute bursts, but ultimately called it a little tiring over the course of a full 50-minute LP.
A little tiring. You know, when you think about 160 BPM for an hour straight, I guess I can physically understand that reaction.
Yeah, it's a lot of audio information to process.
But hold that thought, because you're going to circle back to that tiring comment when we talk about how this album has aged.
It's a very important point.
But first, how did Rashad actually take this? I mean, 79 on Metacritic is solid, but did he hear the noise about it being diluted?
By all accounts, he was incredibly humble about the whole thing. He was quoted saying he was stunned, flattered, and blessed by the reception.
That's really sweet.
He seemed to genuinely appreciate that people were listening to Chicago music on this kind of global scale. He didn't seem to have a chip on his shoulder about the purists at all.
That makes the tragedy that followed even harder to swallow. But before we get to the legacy, I want to talk about the retrospective shift. Because 2013 was one thing, but 2023, a decade later, is a totally different story.
This is a classic case of art just needing time to settle. Sometimes the audience literally needs 10 years to catch up to the artist. If you look at how publications rate the album now, the scores have gone up significantly.
Give us the numbers.
Well, AllMusic originally gave it a 4 out of 5. They have since upgraded that to a perfect 5 out of 5.
Wow, a perfect score. That's a retroactive admission of, hey, we missed a spot.
And Spectrum Culture did something even more dramatic. They originally gave it a 2.5 out of 5, which is basically a failing grade.
2.5, that's brutal.
It is. But for the reissue, they upgraded it to a 4 out of 5.
That is a massive jump. That's going from this is bad to this is great.
It shows that what sounded tiring or confusing to people in 2013 now sounds like a masterpiece. Pitchfork also completely cemented its status. They placed it on their best albums of the decade so far list in 2014, and by 2019 it was number 20 on their best albums of the 2010s overall.
So it went from generally favorable to a decade-defining classic.
Precisely. The tiring repetition that Rolling Stone complained about. We now recognize that as the hypnotic, mantra-like quality that defines the entire genre. And the dilution that Names Faction complained about, we now see that as the necessary evolution that allowed the genre to survive and grow.
And that leads us to the legacy.
Yeah.
Because we can't ignore the fact that Rashad isn't here to see this reevaluation.
No. As we said at the start, it was the sole full-length released while he was alive, and just recently we hit the 10th anniversary in 2023.
That was a big moment. On December 8th, 2023, they released a reissue.
They did, and they kept it in the family, which I think is beautiful. It included a new cover, still designed by Ashes57, and a bonus track called Last Winter that had previously only been available on the CD version.
It's really nice that they kept the visual identity with the exact same designer. It keeps that connection to the roots intact.
Absolutely. And looking back at that 10-year mark, the consensus is pretty clear. This specific album is credited with globally popularizing footwork.
It broke the containment field of Chicago.
It really did. Mixmag, in a retrospective, called it one of the most influential and innovative albums of the last decade. And The Quietus had a quote from back in 2013 that feels almost prophetic now.
Wow.
They said, "Rashad is someone who knows how to signpost a good legacy."
Signpost a good legacy. That gives me chills.
It suggests he knew exactly what he was doing. He was planting a flag. He was saying to everyone, this is where the genre goes next.
So what does this all mean for you listening at home? We've got this album, born from a crew of friends, fueled by cannabis and pure creativity, that somehow managed to bridge the gap between gritty street dance battles and high-concept electronic art.
I think that's the key takeaway. Double Cup wasn't just a collection of tracks, it was a bridge. It took a genre that was very athletic, very intense, and sometimes genuinely hard for outsiders to grasp, and it gave it a language that the wider world could understand.
It translated the frenetic energy of the footwork circle into something you could actually sit and listen to on headphones.
Exactly. And it did that without losing its edge, despite what Fact magazine thought at the time. It proved that footwork wasn't just some local curiosity. It was a serious musical movement with depth, soul, and real staying power.
It feels like it opened the door for everything that came after in that scene. If you listen to modern electronic music, whether it's jungle, drum and bass, or even mainstream pop, you hear those rapid-fire triplets now. You hear that double-cup DNA.
It absolutely did. It normalized that speed. It taught our ears how to process 160 BPM without getting tired.
It's a great reminder that sometimes the most important art comes from the most casual environments. Just friends, hanging out, making music they love.
And trusting that collaboration makes it better. That's the Teklife way.
Exactly. Well, we are coming to the end of our deep dive. We've gone from the aerial view of Chicago to the apartment in San Francisco, through the skeptical reviews of 2013, and into the history books where this album belongs.
It's been quite a journey to look back on.
I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We talked about how Rolling Stone called the album tiring in 2013, and how Spectrum Culture gave it a 2.5. Now, it's hailed as a perfect masterpiece. It makes you wonder, what album came out this year that critics are calling repetitive, noisy, or tiring just because they haven't learned how to listen to it yet?
That is the question. The avant-garde always sounds like noise until it sounds like history.
Something to think about next time you hit play on a new genre.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll catch you on the next one.